if we're waiting for somebody, we can wait. Who are we waiting for? Natalia?
Becky. Becky, as far as I know, is
Okay.
is
Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead and read the thing if you would, and we'll get started. And
Okay. All
Thank you.
participants are notified that this meeting is being recorded. I should first say this is a Board of Library Trustees meeting, Sunday, March 21st, 2021. For this meeting, the town is using a product called GoToWebinar. Attendees using the GoToWebinar app online or on a mobile device should be able to see the meeting presentation and ask questions when directed. Your audio has been muted. Attendees participating by phone are muted and are in listen-only mode. Please use patience when submitting a question. Questions will be responded to at the discretion of the board chair. Questions submitted and hands raised will be communicated to the chair. Please keep in mind that all questions submitted will become part of the meeting's record. Okay. Let's stop this. And, okay. All right, I'm going to put the agenda up.
Okay. If you all have the minutes, I don't know if there's a requirement that we put them up here online or not. But if you have them, have you had a chance to look them over?
Yes. Yes. Yep. The only, if you wouldn't mind just correcting the spelling of my name, it's spelled incorrectly. It's
Okay.
S-E-Y.
Okay. I'm sorry. We'll certainly correct that.
No problem. It's an uncommon spelling, so.
Well, I should have made sure I had it right, but we'll certainly correct that. Is there anything else? If there's a motion to accept them?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for 2/21/21.
A second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And Mackenzie, I'll keep notes here and try to do it again. It should be okay as we go along. For the director's report, Natani, is there anything that is in your report we would want to have Becky be able to participate or?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
And I know that she received the report. She confirmed that.
Okay.
So before I start on the report, so what I did try to do, as you all saw, and I had partial success, was to link to three of my items in the agenda. And that also connects to, I just wanted to make sure that all of you are able to access your town email addresses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because that, basically the town, we now have this Office 365, and there seems to be kind of a hiccup in how I can share documents with people. And apparently I can ask for special permission to be able to share documents with certain people. So obviously I want to make sure that I have your town addresses as exceptions to, who I can share with, so that you'll be able to, in the future, the goal would be that you can just click on whatever is hyperlinked in the agenda and you'll have access straight away to those documents. But part of that is making sure that you actually, your town email addresses are working correctly.
So Natani, if I could just jump in for just a second. So
Sure.
I have spoken with Brian previously about my town address, and since I have a school, irving.com, which is the same, held for 7 years and public record and all of that, it was decided that that could be my email address. So I just want to make sure that you are sending, you've been sending everything to that address, but I just want to make sure for the purposes of this, that's the email you're using.
Yeah, so what I do is I send it to that trustees, I forget how it's, trustees library at irving-ma.gov. So my understanding is that you're all added to that and you all receive anything that gets sent to that address. So Mackenzie, for example, I don't separately put in your address, but it seems like you're receiving them. So it must be connected to that trustee's address.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what I've been doing is I've been sending, because I wasn't sure about Pat's access to her email account, her town email account, because I know there was some problems at first with that. So I was copying in her personal email address that she had given me, and also Dan as well. I seem to recall you had some problems with your town address, so I've been copying your personal address in there as well. But you know, if we can get away from that and use the town addresses as provided, then that would be, I think that would be the best solution. So.
Well, I currently am able to access my town account,
Okay.
town email, and that has been an ongoing thorn in that over the last couple of years, a dozen times perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
I've signed in, I've got the password, the user's all written down, I'm doing exactly right. After I try it, I'm locked out, Jackie resets it again. Maybe that'll go away, I don't know. But I do appreciate even the CC to my to my personal address, like, hey Dan, go look at the town, try to or something. So, 'cause I'm on my this regular email all day, every day, seems like.
Yeah.
Frequently, more so than the town. So okay, but that's fine. It'll work out.
Okay. All right. I don't see Becky yet. So are we okay if I don't go through things very closely line by line, but just highlight a few things?
It's fine with me.
Okay. So I did just want to highlight, as we know, the electricity line is overdrawn, and I'll get to that in a second. And then just with this most recent billing cycle, the building maintenance line is overdrawn. Now, what I have been charging to that line is fire, like the fire monitoring system, and cleaning supplies that Pam and Glenn leave the invoices for me. So I think that's more a matter of just what line I'm charging it to. I don't think overall we're going to be over. So if you look a little bit further down at the expenses line, that's only about 50% spent. And I think this is more a process of finding out, you know, what kind of comes under building maintenance. And what I may do at the end of the fiscal year is actually make that expenses line a little bit less to start with, and then increase that building maintenance line. So just moving money around, because really the expenses line, the only thing that I take out of that are the expenses, materials that we use to catalog our library items. So we're definitely not going to get through probably even a third of what's still remaining in that in terms of what we use for cataloging.
Just to comment, I'm fine with that.
Yep.
Although moving forward, because we're in this, I don't know, honeymoon period of a transition with a new library, and people are more receptive than they might be to change. You know, because we're unsure and we're just working our way through it, then we might increase the building maintenance substantially. And also, you know, with regard to the electricity being over, we've talked with Brian and if and the finance committee, if we need to have a reserve fund transfer, it's a possibility if it's needed. But if we can juggle things around, you know, legally, that's fine with me also. Other comments?
No, I'm pretty good.
Okay.
Thank you. So moving down to the building project table, which hasn't changed from, you know, the last several meetings. Brian and I know that we have to resolve this because there are currently things that were charged to lines that they shouldn't have been within the building project budget. I know I cite this frequently, but for example, the bottom line, the photovoltaic solar array, none of that has been spent, which we clearly know is not accurate. So those things have been charged to other lines, probably the construction line right at the top. So those are not records that I necessarily can have access to just easily. That's something that I have to go through Brian and Deb Narrow for. So I did just reach out to Brian, and he's aware of the timeline that we have for the final report as well. And he just requested the last 2 years worth of records for the budget project, the building project budget. So he expects to be looking through that and have something for me to review probably by Tuesday of this week. The issue with that is that Nick from P3, our OPM, he is responsible for submitting the financial part of the final report, which again is due at the end of April. And he and Brian have talked about this, and they both know that what Nick has for a budget doesn't match what Brian has for a budget. So that needs to be reconciled. So we were working on that. So no changes there in what you've seen in previous meetings.
Okay. Before you go further down, you scrolled past the list of accounts there. Yeah, I just want to point out, so Pat's aware, and I'm sure Mackenzie's aware, and Tony also. We'll have to keep watching how this goes, because there's at least 1 or 2 people on the library building committee who believe this library state aid fund with the, I can't read it, 16,372 in it, perhaps ought to be made available to pay some parts of the building project, in part because of the way the grant was written to request proposal to begin with. And we've pretty steadfastly, I think, expressed to anyone who was asked that if the building project runs out of money and they need some money, then yeah, it's available. It's part of the possibility there. But it's never our intent to have it be the first thing spent and then there's money left over, because the building project had $5 million. We've got 16,000. And we have other things that library related, we could eventually spend it on. Is that pretty accurately expressed, Mackenzie, as you recall?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Exactly.
Okay. So that's why at this point, we're not spending that 16,000. We're kind of waiting to see how that all shakes out. Okay.
Yes, thank you for explaining that again. It really bears repeating. I know that, it's come up on a few meetings since I've been in the directorship. And, from my conversations with Brian, it sounds like we're not over budget. If anything, we're going to come in at a little bit under budget, perhaps. So that's really all I know right now, but it would be curious once we have the budget, the charges in the appropriate lines to see what is there, and then kind of tackle that question of the state aid a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's also bears noting that we are not done with the landscaping, and there's the question of installing fencing in the back, which is not a inexpensive endeavor. So, this 16,000 may end up needing to go to something like that. But I agree with Dan. Before we go ahead and spend that, I want to spend down what's in the building construction budget. And so, when Natani, when you said we might come in a little under, I'm thinking then let's use that for the fencing, because and then
along that line, Mackenzie, I was at they called it their quote unquote final walkthrough, but they had so many things on their list of things to do. I think they may have another walkthrough before they're done with it.
I know.
And it was discussed about the fencing, the gravel, and the patio. Variety of things were discussed.
Yep.
And this was one of them that it's not necessarily should come out of the library budget, our regular annual operating budget.
Right.
And then find ways to cover those things. Landscaping. Okay.
Yep, I totally agree with that. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else about budget, I'll move on to the building updates.
Okay.
So Dan, you segued nice by mentioning the final run through that we had on February 26th. We had quite a number of people there, and it was pretty eye-opening for me because there's been issues that I've brought to the trustees meetings, and we've talked about them, and I've talked about them with other people, Brian, for example, but then they actually found things that I had not noticed, such as the delaminating on all of the doors. So would it be helpful to bring up the draft report from Nick? Are you all interested in seeing that?
Sure.
I think so. And just for
Okay.
I don't know if Pat or Mackenzie are aware of it. I wouldn't have noticed it either. You look at a door and you kind of think it's a solid wood door, and frequently it's not. There's
Right.
some kind of veneer attached to it. And to the trained eye, it's kind of bubbling up a little bit, or delaminating, they call it, and it shouldn't be. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those things, we didn't want to let it get away past the warranty period. And we end up having to pay to replace a whole bunch of doors. So they're working with manufacturers and all that stuff. So go ahead, Natanya.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm really grateful for the people that were there, and I've been having ongoing conversations with Pam and Glenn about certain issues. There were things that I didn't know about that Glenn has noticed in the work that he does in the building. So it kind of takes a village, just to use that overused expression. But so this is what got put on the letter. So there are a couple things that aren't on here because I think because they were already being handled and Nick is handling them through the architect and through the architect's engineers, namely the ADA door. I don't think that's on here. Anyways, let's start at the top. So the reseating, we know we already had a letter from Maroy about that to reseed the lawn. The lockers have been in progress for a while. Both Nick and I are in contact with Cody Robinson of Tiffin. It looks like they're exploring a completely different option because we've had the keypads on the current lockers fail so often. So I'm hoping that they present us with some options that we can consider for that.
I'm sorry, Natanya, I
No
hate to
problem.
just kind of jump in, but is one of the options a non-battery operated option? It's been told that you guys
Yes.
are running through batteries like crazy.
Yes, definitely. Yep.
Okay.
I did invest in rechargeable batteries during the summer. But either way, it's not just the fact that you're going through batteries, but they're kind of unpredictable, right? Like you don't really know when the batteries are gonna conk out, because unless you go through every day and test the batteries, it's just it's a little bit of a tedious process. So yes, I believe that is an option that is going to be on the table.
Okay.
Removal of erosion control in the spring. The light replacement at the flagpoles, the one down the ground, that is on order, and that has been in process for several months. So that has not been replaced yet. The excessively loud heating unit, which is just outside of my office, again, they will be on site to address that. That was not something that I necessarily picked up. That was something that Glenn and Pam pointed out.
They need to come soon then, otherwise you're going to be, theoretically we're going to be shutting off the heat soon. So, hopefully
Right.
they're going to come while the heating system is still running.
Yeah, I imagine they have ways of, testing, having it on to test it. But they've been aware of that for several months as well. So the entrance door, which I know I go on and on about that, I apologize. We have had some real movement on that in terms of, I think it was Friday, it was last week, we had Dan, I think it's Dan or Don, from P3, and the contractor for the doors, or not the contractor, the kind of like the sales rep for the door. So they went around and spent a couple hours looking at everything, and definitely said, you know, new hardware is needed for this one. So Maroy has reached out, and probably Tuesday or Wednesday, a hardware technician is coming out to address that issue. So I'm really hopeful that after that, we have a door that works really well. That's my hope. Again, the interior and exterior door are delaminating, so they're looking at that. The paint coverage, again, this was something in consult with Pam as well, who has a lot of experience with painting. I had noticed a few areas in the building where you can see with the right light, you can see that the paint is different. It almost looks like they forgot to do a final coat. So they're looking at that, and I don't see that it would be a complete repaint of the building coming out of that, but I do see that they are going to have contractors coming back and addressing the areas that are definitely, you know, easy to see that there's something going on with the paint. The wall finish is not something that I have a lot of kind of, you know, I can't really give you much information about that. That's really been Glenn that's noticed that and brought it to their attention. There's been some cracking in certain areas. So Maroy is currently looking at that, and I believe they are sending out a structural engineer to look at certain areas where there's cracking in the beams. Again, some of the way the doors were, like the trim around the doors was installed, they kind of didn't do the best job, I suppose, and it looked like they needed to secure the trim parts a little bit better than they have. But again, that's part of the entire door issue. So, but that was not something that I had picked up. That was something that they picked up. The light sensors, again, this is something that I haven't necessarily noticed, but Pam, because she's the first person coming into the building in the morning, often at around 7 a.m., she says as she's pulling in and driving in, the lights are on in the building. So there seems to be some sort of sensor problem there, maybe like something too sensitive that it's setting the lights off, turning the lights on at, you know, times that really it doesn't need to be. So they are going to send somebody out to look at that. Again, another Glenn thing, heaving at the sidewalk and ponding. Definitely people that are, you know, responsible for sanding and plowing and that kind of thing. They're going to notice these things, which I'm grateful for. The other various parking lot issues. And I think we've talked about the loose stone pebbles in the back patios. So it looks like at that meeting, were you there, Dan, when they were talking about how they're going to provide the sample that the town was initially given?
I was.
Yeah, so it looks like they want to kind of go back and look at that further. Did you have anything to add more about that? They discussed it for a while, didn't they, Dan?
Yeah, a couple of things. Glenn's going to find where the sample is buried somewhere, not buried under the ground, but somewhere in a pile of stuff at the treatment plant or the highway department or wherever they stored it. And I don't know if it was a 1 or 2 foot square sample of here's what it's kind of going to look like. And Jackie was adamant that the sample is going to be relatively smooth, kind of bumpy, but not loose rocks. And I forget what the fellow's name was, the younger fellow there said, well, this what he sees now is what he typically sees. So if in fact the sample is different than what they see now, then we have some recourse to change it. And may not be easy or quick or cheap. But if the sample is pretty indicative of what they've already got there, then we've got what we got. We'll have to deal with it, kind of as I recall it, but they're not letting it go. No. On the lights, it was discussed also let me back up just a little, that, I mean, I happened to see it. I was going by one night late at night. I think I was coming back from New Hampshire, and the lights were just, the whole building was lit up like a Christmas tree. So they're looking at that, you know, what is the issue there? You know, they should turn on and off when we want them to, programmable stuff. And then we went up in, I guess they call it the attic, through Natani's office and up some metal stairs to the above everything. And they were looking at some of the beams, those looked like laminated big beams that hold the roof up kind of thing. And they had cracks. And some of them looked like maybe just cracked paint or minor settling and stuff. And other ones look like, you know, for such a short time that they've been there, are they actually major cracks or not? And I think that's kind of what they are going to have the engineer look at, because, you know, we don't want to be 5, 6, 8, 10 years down the road and we're trying to replace those things. That'd be a nightmare. So those are other things that I recall from that walkthrough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty
I have
thorough.
to say, and this probably isn't the case, but I was talking to somebody about the library and I was saying that we're having these issues. Somebody said to me, when they built the building, did they account for the extra weight of all the books, reminiscent of other libraries that have been built when they haven't accounted for the weight of the books? And I'm like, well, I sure do hope so, but the fact that we are having structural issues right now makes me wonder.
Yeah,
You know,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, I haven't investigated that myself, but I would say that's definitely, you know, the people that you went with too have so much experience with building libraries. You know, we're not a two-story library. And I have also heard that some of those stories that circulate about not, you know, accounting for the weight of the books are actually just kind of urban legends that circulate.
Sure, but it was just kind of a funny thing to bring up, and especially since like we're having structural issues, and you're right, it probably isn't related, but I just thought it was a really interesting comment, and I honestly couldn't answer.
Yeah. Yeah, let's hope, like you said, let's hope so.
Yeah, I'm relatively confident at this point, anyways, that they are genuinely looking at these things, trying to make them right. And I made the point when I talk with them to let them know that, you know, we're cooperative, we're not jerks here. On the other hand, there's a substantial investment, and whether it's the people who can't seem to get the front door fixed correctly or whatever it might be, the paint or whatever, other people build libraries, and they call around to places that have had libraries built and say, you know, what do you think about these people? And I'd love to give them glowing reports. They did wonderful things and fixed everything that was wrong. You know, but the alternative is, if they don't fix anything, I'll be just as pleased to tell people, hire somebody else, don't hire them. And you know, so just for the PR of it, letting them know that, you know, and threaten them, we just let them know we want it fixed. So I think that they heard it, and I think they're working on it.
I believe they did.
I agree.
Okay.
And one thing I didn't see on this list was the snow off the roof issue. And I know that you had talked about it, but I just didn't see it on this list.
Yeah, no, they didn't put that and the, like I said, the ADA door in. I think the way Brian explained it to me was that they haven't put those in because currently Nick is trying to get information, I believe, out of both of those from the architect. The architect has strangely been missing he's not actually missing, but he has not been present for or communicating the last few, you know, the emails, and he wasn't at this walkthrough. So so Nick, I believe, is working hard on our behalf to get answers to both of those. But I did point that out to Nick and Brian. So it's not that they're not being addressed, but I believe that they weren't, I mean, it does say warranty outstanding items, so it seems like they should be in there. I will bring it up with them again. It's not like they don't, it's not like none of us have talked about it. Do you remember anything, Dan, from those issues at the meeting?
We did discuss it with both with them, and specifically the snow and the ice off the roof. Glenn had some experience discussing it with them also, that some what I would propose, just sort of a V-shaped thing that diverts stuff off to the side, and they've had some experience with those just coming down with the snow and ice when they crash to the ground. So I'm not sure what their solution would be, but we made it clear to them, you know, this is not Gulfport, Mississippi. Any architect around should know we're gonna have snow and ice. We cannot have it falling on people at the front door. So they're aware of it.
Okay, I would like that to be, you know, continue to be brought up. Now, again, we're past, I mean, in theory, we're past the snow and ice stage of the season. So I just don't want this to get forgotten along with, you know, because there's so many other things that they're addressing, and it's not, you know, not the weather to remind ourselves of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will bring that up again and see where those items kind of fall in this overall list.
Okay. Pat?
Okay.
Do any of these issues, of course, there's different companies that are addressing each of these different issues. Are any of these put on a timeline where they need to be addressed and fixed? Or is it just as they can do it? I'm not getting the feeling that they're, especially with the snow issue, that out of sight, out of mind kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good question, Pat.
So, I mean, just going back to the letter, there's a few kind of not specific dates, but there's a few, like, you know, installed in the performed in the spring. To be honest, I definitely have not seen any like specific dates mentioned, nor have I at any time since I've been here. It's really like just going back and forth and waiting for somebody to get back to you. And that's Eversource as well. I mean, Eversource has just been months, you know, of communication. So to answer your question, honestly, no, there have not been specific dates given to me anyways.
Is there a reason that we haven't made them put on point to say, give us, we don't have to dictate to them, but certainly they should be able to say, this is the date that we'll have it finished by. And if they can't, possibly it would be worth the effort to let them know that we have a date for them.
Yeah, I like that.
I think those are both reasonable points. In inquiring through Brian and the project manager, that, you know, just alerting them, we need, not we just casually like to have, we need to have some kind of a on, you know, dates when one of these different things expected to be done. That's fine. And part of the reason for this letter is we're coming up on warranty period running out, and these are things that just extend past that because we've not signed off on any of this stuff, and this is our documentation that they still need to fix it, but asking or requiring when you're going to do it, it's not a bad thing to do. So we can do that.
I don't have that list. I wasn't able, I can't seem to get it up. So I'm sort of going blind here. The list of all the items that needed to be corrected through this building inspection that took place. I don't know, possibly all of these people should be contacted and asked. If you can't give us one, then we will give you one. I don't know, there must be a list of people that are going to address these problems, right? I don't know.
So are you happy, or would the board like me to, like Dan said, through Brian and the OPM and Nick is our current, you know, contact point for the OPM, to ask two things, or to address two things: the where does the ADA door and the snow on the roof remediation come into this outstanding list, and do the contractors have specific dates where they will have addressed these issues by?
I think those are the things we'd like to ask them or tell them we need, but also I'd suggest if you'll be kind enough to do it, Natani, let Brian know, but also involve Jackie. So Pat, we've got a building committee that kind of has, I think they've extended their time for a while, and they've pretty much been the ones, handling all this. So we can just let them know, hey, Brian and building committee, we feel the need to know, because someday down the road and all this stuff hits the fan and something's wrong, we're going to be the ones standing at town meeting trying to explain why we need the money. The building committee will be disbanded. The OPM is gone. And, so we just like them to deal with it. But involving them, they won't feel left out and get their nose out of joint because we didn't ask them. It's their job to make it right. So, okay.
Okay, so I'll include Jackie in that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm not so sure it'd be a bad idea to give them, at least give them a time frame that we can hear back from them too. I mean, okay, we're going to give you, when is your next meeting? Why don't you discuss it? Get back to us, let's say 7 days after. Start putting people on notice that they have a responsibility, because if not, this is what's going to happen.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, we've been strung along with these things for months and months and months.
Not acceptable. Not acceptable.
Yep. I agree.
Okay. All right. I will send that to them. I wanted to just reiterate that I am working on the final report, which is due to the MBLC by the end of April. I have asked for input from the building committee, which Jackie helped to coordinate that. So I've gotten some input back from 3 members of the building committee. And I would love just for you to be aware, if you would like to send me input, I would appreciate that too, as the Board of Trustees. I do have a question about this. I was talking to Brian about this. The MBLC recommends that the previous director who worked on the project provide input for the report. I was a little bit surprised, but they said it's not uncommon, or it's very common for directors to work on a building project and then retire or leave, either not long before the project is finished or not long after. In other words, before the report is submitted. So I don't necessarily think, I think it would be helpful to get input from Barbara Friedman, the previous director. However, I don't think it's appropriate to not compensate somebody for that if they're providing input to a report. So I'm wondering how the board feels about, paying for an hour of time for her to provide input for the final report.
I'm fine with it. I don't know what Mackenzie thinks, but and again, I don't know, Natani or Pat, if you've talked to Barbara much at all. I don't mind calling her. I get along with her okay. And just what I'm going to ask you, Natani, is can we gain access to final reports that a couple other libraries have done? New Salem, Athol, something like that, where trustees have had some input. So I don't have the slightest idea what I would say for input. I mean, maybe Mackenzie has some thoughts, but if we have an example.
There's specific questions that we have to address. So it's not really a free form thing. There's specific questions
for trustees.
It's just for the report. So the director writes the narrative report with input from whoever worked on the project.
Okay, but what I heard you say, maybe I misunderstood, was you wanted some input from the trustees.
Well, I'm inviting you to provide input. I don't want you to not have that opportunity to do that.
Okay, and maybe Mackenzie has some ideas, but I don't have the slightest clue what kind of input I'd have.
Well, I mean, honestly, right now, my input would be not very kind about the the architect and our project manager, only because of all these issues we're having. So like Dan said before, I do think we should be mentioning these things. I would hate for somebody else to be getting this building grant and looking for these contractors and think, oh well, they must have had wonderful experiences everywhere. I just think it's worth noting that we're having some issues, and maybe they'll get resolved at the end of the day, but nonetheless we've had these issues, and so I think that's worth noting, so somebody can go into this eyes wide open.
I'm thinking that there are tactful ways to say that don't just particularly trash anybody, but we might say we recognize the importance of carefully determining what other projects, project managers, architects, anybody involved with a project, what other projects have they done and how things worked out. So you're absolutely certain you're getting somebody with a stellar track record of meeting whatever issues come along. And to me, that's enough. If I saw that, I'd look at it and say, somebody didn't have the best of experience here. I better be careful who I hire. Pat.
I sort of feel a little bit like that, but I also feel that if we're going to give feedback, it's not only for reviewing, it's for them to use as a vehicle to correct a lot of the issues that possibly they could with another project. So I think good feedback is both ways. I don't mind sugarcoating, but I really would like, I'm not a read between the lines kind of gal. I'm sort of like, tell me like it is, and then I'll be able to know. I'm a concrete thinker. What can I say? But
that's okay.
I feel that it doesn't necessarily have to trash, but truthfulness will probably be a better way to move forward with feedback and honesty.
Yeah, and I would say that in the 3 responses that I have gotten, or the 3, it's a mix of both. Because it's one of the questions, for example, is how did you find the process? Well, this process has been going on for a very long time, right? So you're going to have there's going to be a reflection there of some good things and probably not so good things. So that's what I'm seeing. And I think like Pam said, you write very concretely what your experience was. That's what they're interested in. So some of it's going to be less than glowing, but some of it, from what I can gather, I wasn't here, has been excellent, very good. So a mix of both.
And I think another thing where we have to consider is the fact that if we're going to tell them, this issue, let's just say hypothetically, the snow issue. This was addressed before the winter months. Here we are, the end of March, and it hasn't been addressed. It has been addressed to the point where they're notified that it has to be corrected, but it has not been corrected. Well, you know what? Maybe we should talk about this, because is this something that we're going to put in your review? Would you like that to be put in our review? Maybe. My guess is you're not going to want to.
Yeah.
But if you aren't going to address it, then we're going to have to start addressing it in a review, because that's an honest, forward way of using the review process.
And that's reasonable when Tiny, when you, and I'm sure I'll talk with them over time also, the next few days, week or two, when you talk with Brian and Jackie about this, just let them know that, again, none of us are trying to be jerks. We want to be honest. We want to be kind and reasonable, but if things have been dragging on for a year and all they've been doing is talking about it, they're not really doing anything, we're going to have some input into the final report, and we just like to be honest so other people know. And that may be quite an incentive for them to build a fire and get things going.
And don't you think that should be incentive for them to step it up?
If I were in their shoes, I would.
Yep.
And those of us that have been in business, yes.
Okay.
That's incentive.
And could I suggest, Mackenzie, you've been more involved in this than I have been from well, many years here. You know, whatever comment you might have, could I suggest we submit our comments to Natani, whatever they might be. And Natani, if we can find an example of what other trustees have done, doesn't mean we have to do the
Yeah.
same thing, but it gives us a clue. And whatever comments we have, if we funnel them through Natani and just try to, you know, wordsmith it in a way that is, you know, tactful and reasonable, sometimes blunt if it needs to be, and get a report put out that is positive and helpful, you know, but won't get us sued. Okay.
Yeah, so
I just think that people made, you know, this was, you know, they made a lot of money off of this project from us, right? This was
Yeah.
not an inexpensive project. I'm sure there is more expensive libraries out there, but nonetheless, they made quite a good chunk of change off of us. And to just, you know, have such, you know, right at the end here now, to have such a bad taste be left in our mouths is unfortunate. But I think it was avoidable, and you know, it's on them, the reason that we are feeling the way that we are right now. And my feeling is, if we can prevent another, you know, building committee or library trustees from feeling this way, then that's what we should do. And if nothing else, to just say, if you go with them, know that you're going to have to be really on top of them, that you're going to have to spend a lot of time following up with them. You know, I mean, they may choose at the end of the day to continue to work with these people, but at least they'll know that they've got to put that time and energy in.
Natani, what's the date on this letter?
which letter? The one from Nick?
Yeah.
Let me see.
It's on there at the top, I think.
Oh, I can't see the top. So
I don't think it's being shared right now, is it?
It is.
I've got items 1 through 6, but I don't have I can't see the top.
Oh,
of it.
okay. I would share.
I don't have it.
March 3rd.
Okay. So, all right, we've got about 3 weeks close that we've had the letter. It's reasonable to ask the questions we're asking. What are you doing? When are you going to finish it up? And that's good.
Yep.
So, okay. Anything else on this particular letter? We can move along a little bit.
Yeah, I
have
just
a-
wanted to put, oh, that's Becky.
I just want to make a comment. Being on the building committee, having served on the feasibility committee and on the hiring committee to decide which architect we would go with and which OPM, those questions were asked of other libraries who had both of these representatives, both P3 and Johnson Roberts as architects. And everybody said, oh, they're great. And Dan from P3, his company really fights for what is right. And I have to say that in the beginning, I had a very good feeling about everything that was going on. But I too, as part of the building committee and knowing what was said at meetings, and then being in this position where many items need to be fixed, it doesn't seem like the reputation that they had prior to us hiring them was as glowing as we had thought it was, because that's why we hired them. They had experience with libraries. We were told that Dan fights for what is right and what was in your, plan. So I'm feeling very discouraged, and I'm also feeling like now that the building is here and they've got the money, they've kind of they don't feel like they have to respond to these particular issues. That's just how I'm feeling. So
I feel the same way, that they ran out of steam and they're on to the next thing. They've got the money.
Yeah.
Let's just go on to the next project.
There is some holdback of money. So, I mean, they haven't gotten 100% of their payment, but it's just a question of, is that holdback money really enough to make them all that interested in working and solve these problems. And it doesn't seem like maybe that's the case, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, we'll relay these concerns to Brian and Jackie and try to move them along and, get them off the dime to get something done. But also, Becky, I don't know when the next building committee meeting is or how the whole building committee feels about all this stuff, or if they're all aware of it. But if you'd be kind enough to bring it up with them, that'd be a good thing also.
Right. At our last building committee meeting, Jackie did say everybody got a copy of this, and so everybody was aware, but it was not put that we were to do anything about it. It wasn't in our hands per se, that it was in the, like, it was being looked into. And I don't know, my feeling was that the building committee, I don't know if they had heard about this before, but nobody really voiced any opposition or any concern about it, and I don't know why. I don't know if they just thought, oh, it's being taken care of. I think some of the building committee members were not aware that some of these issues, like with the front door, that were being discussed for many months. Because
well,
we did not have a meeting during all this. And the other thing I want to say is I think it would be good to get input from Barbara. And I feel like we're kind of at a loss because Barbara is not here. And she was the one that was at the weekly work site meetings. So she knows what was said. And we're kind of in the dark because we don't even have her input as to, things that went on, or, I don't know.
Well, I know Barbara had been involved in other library building projects also, so she may give some insight. And unless the board wants to do otherwise, I don't mind giving her a call, see if she contributed to other final reports. Might she contribute to this one? We might pay her something for her time, and or she may just do it. I don't know. We'll see. But also, it's a good point that you make, Becky, that you give us the information that the building committee seems to have kind of moved on too. I mean, perhaps. I mean, they're aware of the landscaping and the fencing and a few things. And Jackie's aware of these things. She was at the meeting. But as a committee, perhaps they don't feel a responsibility to push all this stuff. They've done their job pretty much, and it's up to Brian and the project managers to do it. And our interest in it is so that we're not the ones blamed for things that are wrong later on. So we want to be sure that they do it. So I think we got a good handle on this one.
Yeah.
Okay?
The only thing I would say about offering to pay Barbara, and I don't have an issue with paying her for her time, is to just maybe Natani, you or Dan, just chat with Brian about that, because she's not an employee anymore. So they would have to create a special like contract just for this 1 hour or however many hours job. And so I just would want to make sure that however that's done, like Brian's aware of it, so it's done the right way, because it's not as if she's a town employee anymore.
Right.
And so that it just gets a little bit trickier to hire somebody.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I don't mind, I'm not sure we're actually hiring her. We may just put it under expense for a consultant fee or something, for $100, whatever it might be. I don't know. But, she may just say, yeah, I'll give you my thoughts and we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And maybe
So I actually approached Brian first about this, just to get his thoughts, and he agreed with me that it seemed inappropriate to just ask a former employee for input without paying them. So he just wanted me to check with you first. So that's what I'm doing. Dan, are you proposing that you're going to make the contact, or do you want me to proceed with something?
I had wanted to call her about something unrelated anyway, so I don't mind calling her unless you want. Okay.
No, if you could call her, I would just say that, just float the idea, and that obviously we would have to, figure out the formality of it through Brian.
Okay. All right.
So just two other quick things about that. So Dan, I think that's an excellent idea about the examples of other reports. I will check on that tomorrow when our MBLC representative is back in the office, and see what I can get. She hasn't offered that before, but it just may not have occurred to her that, I don't really know if those reports are confidential or not, but I doubt they are. And with the questions that are on the final report template, would you like me to send those to all of you so that you have a way to frame your thoughts? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So as Becky and Dan have talked about, or I think it might have been Dan, might have been Mackenzie, I guess it's the landscape committee, subcommittee of the building committee, is that right? Met on March 10th. And so there's been some landscaping things that are revving up. Mackenzie and Becky, I believe you were both there. Did you want to just touch on anything that was a takeaway from that?
I think, and jump in at any point, Becky. The biggest thing was that Teresa Foster, right? That's her name, right? Had offered a landscaping plan to us. She's a master gardener, so she has a lot of experience coming up with landscaping plans. And so I think the general consensus was to go ahead with her plans with the understanding that she's going to be able to find the plants that she can find. So we can't, say exactly that there's going to be a dogwood tree here and an iris plant there, because she may not be able to find those specific varieties, but she will find something similar enough, whether it's a bush or a tree or a flower or whatever, to fulfill the plan that she laid out to us. And that's where the fencing idea came up as well, Dan, as your plants. The thought was to, if however many plants you have and are still in good shape, to put them towards the back, because they'll grow really big and they'll be beautiful. And that'll help kind of, in my opinion, that'll help kind of cover that kind of ditch area in the back where it, descends down, and then you can kind of see the school through the trees. So that will kind of pretty that area up quite a bit with those plantings. We talked about the fact that there was the pile of loam that had been scraped off the topsoil that had been scraped off and put in a pile, so then that can be reused back over the top, and that we probably will end up having to buy more topsoil just because we don't really know how good the soil is there, and if we're going to dress it, we might as well dress it with good quality topsoil. So that will be brought in. And Brian was there, and he mentioned that the DPW could probably help us with things like, getting it and collecting all the plants and other vegetation and bringing it to the site. But that we didn't want to do that too early, because the town has had experiences in the past where plantings have been put as kind of just a holding zone, and apparently people have come and helped themselves to those plantings. So, we want to make sure that whatever we order, we pick up just about the time that we're going to actually be putting them into the ground. What else, Becky? Am I missing anything? Or Tani, you were there too?
The other thing is that Jackie was going to order the planters, or try to order the planters that we had picked out from last year. And then once they come in, we will start filling them. And I'll let Tani address this, but Teresa Foster talked about having businesses sponsor a planter. But first, the landscaping subcommittee of the building committee will plant the planters when they come in, will make them look nice. So those have been ordered, and I can't remember when our next meeting is, but there is movement on the landscaping aspect.
Right. Teresa actually offered to sponsor the 2 planters that were going to be right outside the front door. So she would take it upon herself to keep those 2 planters stocked with fresh seasonal plants in exchange for a like a little advertisement of her business, you know, kind of tucked in the planter. And I've actually seen that in a lot of different planting situations. That's a pretty common thing. And the thought was that possibly other businesses may want to jump on board and do that as well. Teresa then offered her experience and her expertise. If there was a company, say a bank or something, that wanted to sponsor it but didn't really have much knowledge about plants, that she would offer to say, oh, put this and this and this, and it'll cost X amount of dollars. Then they would just front the money, and she would take care of putting the planter together and making it look pretty. That's something that's when I suggested to Tani that we talk about it here at the trustee meeting, only because that is our purview, because it's part of the library. That would be the responsibility of the trustees. So I just wanted to make sure that we all had a chance to talk about that idea of having the planter sponsored, and you know, just in general, kind of what we thought about that. And Teresa's offer is very generous, and I think it's a great one. But I do think we should, as trustees, just have a conversation about that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mackenzie, for recommending that. It's on the agenda for later, but you know, perfect time to talk about it now.
Oh, yeah, sounds like it's done elsewhere, and as long as we don't have some business gives us $100 and think they're gonna, you know, we're gonna care for the thing forever. You know, that's not quite how it would go, but I think as long as we're clear, some business may want to, you know, donate and help out, and that's fine. And if Teresa is willing to, you know, keep the things looking great, that's good. Pam just has to give them some water. Somebody has to give them some water, and or things dry up. So
yeah, I think it's probably something that we should put together some documentation about, a contract and you know, here's the expectations. And I don't know whether it would make sense to just say, if you want to do you know, a month sponsorship, it's going to be $50. If you want to do, you know, 6 months, it's going to be X amount of dollars. I don't know if that would be a better way to do it, or whether, yeah, I don't know, but I do think we need to have some sort of formalized agreement with the company, so that we know that who's responsible for what and how long they're going to be responsible for it. And you know, that way we can advertise potentially this as a great, you know, thing you can do for your library. Sponsor a planter, you know.
yeah, it seems like, I mean, you're right, putting things in clearly documented so everybody doesn't have different expectations, but
yeah,
a business may be more inclined to give you $100 or two, you know, for a season of whatever it is, whatever the amount may be. And you know, and business don't want to, any business would not want to have a planter there with a bunch of old dead dried up plants. Look what I gave everybody, you know. So that's be some mechanism for keeping them maintained in water. Just one more thing to do. And Pam, the town, others may just say, well, we don't want to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what Teresa did say, and correct me if I misunderstood, but it sounded like Teresa was willing to help, you know, help the businesses put those planters together as long as they paid for the planting. So she would come in and say, this would be pretty, this would be pretty, and then help get those things planted and maintained as long as the business paid for those for that material.
Yeah, and the planting of it is simple, but the you know, every couple times a week giving it some water, somebody's got to do that, or stuff will just dry up. So okay.
Well, if you're talking about annuals, they have to be cared for every day.
Yeah, okay.
Who's going to be responsible for the care? Did Teresa say that she would be responsible for caring for them every day?
No,
I
no.
don't think we got that much into the, no pun
Yeah.
intended, the weeds of the conversation. We are going to have these planters though. So somebody's going to have to care for them because they're coming. We ordered them, or the
Mhm.
building committee ordered them. So whether it's a business that they give X amount of dollars for every month and that's part of the caring for it, or whether the library has to write a grant for, plantings, or whether we take it out of our budget, we're going to have these planters. So somehow we've got to figure out how we're going to deal with them and who's going to do that.
Well, is it the building committee that wanted the planters to begin with?
Yes. I mean,
So-
right, Becky? I would say yes. That was their
Well,
thought.
I think it was up to the building committee to come up with a landscaping plan. But it isn't up to the building committee to commit to taking care of the type of tree or the type of bushes or whatever that were put into the plan. And in the original blueprints and everything, there was a plan for landscaping, and that was gone over, but there were a few things that were of concern to the committee. Some of the plants were too expensive, and we didn't feel that it would be wise to have them. And plus the maintenance of some of the plantings that were in the original plans, the maintenance issues were of concern, like the certain types of, I don't know, like those dogwood tulip trees, how when they drop their petals, again, that's a maintenance issue to keep that cleaned up. So that's why we didn't want those type of plants. We were trying to look to what would be maintained easily for whoever was responsible at the library for taking care of them. So that's why we didn't go with the original plan. And also because of money, the cost to have who they recommended do it would take much more than our $10,000 budget that we have allotted. So that was it, but it was not that the building committee would maintain it.
That's fine, but how about if, Tanya, when we talk to Brian about things that are on our mind, is, we're gonna have, whether it's bushes I give or wherever they come from, doesn't matter. There's gonna be some plantings, trees, bushes, whatever they are, and then these planters with likely annuals in them. How did the building committee, or did they, how does the building committee / Brian or anybody expect this stuff's gonna be maintained? It doesn't matter what it is, it needs to get watered till it's established first year. You don't have to do much else to them unless they're, staked in place or something, but whatever the plant is, it requires water. It's like the magic of growing stuff.
Mhm.
And somebody's gonna do it. So how did Brian, how did they envision this happening? I mean, is the librarian supposed to go out and water the stuff? What's on their mind here? So
Well,
we'll figure it out.
who maintains the senior center?
Mm.
Who maintains their landscaping?
Well, I don't know how much they have for planters or stuff. Once trees and lawns are established, you don't have to do much to them.
Yeah,
Planters with annuals you do.
I know that at the school we have planters, and it's just kind of a volunteer. 3 people that were interested in gardening and liked it are the ones that maintain it. It wasn't like a formal thing or anything. They just said, "Oh, would you mind?" And they said, "Oh, sure." And I believe that's kind of the same way it is at the community center. It's just, people have an interest in gardening, so they go out and they pick the dead leaves off, and it's nothing formal per se.
Well, I know that the garden that the seniors have that for the vegetables and stuff, I know that was to be for seniors to be actively
Yeah, that's I think
taking
a
care
little
of.
different. Yeah,
And it isn't. They are not doing it. So I don't think that, I can't say for sure, but I think that the upkeep is one person.
Well, could I also just throw a comment? I mean, we may want to have business sponsor these things, but this is something that, once the plants are in the planters especially, something that the Friends might consider as a donation that's cheap to free. Just, you just show up, every couple of days and give it a couple gallons of water. It's not a particularly technical or intensive thing. They just need some water. Pull out the weeds. And the Friends might just say, well, we'll put up a little sign, for the
No,
Friends of the library.
I am not, I will bring it up to the Friends, but we have been in that position before. And I do not have, the Friends group does not have enough members to rotate that duty
Okay.
to people. I just wouldn't want to take that on. I will present it to the group, but we have one person who does a lot of the gardening and did the planters down at the other library. It did not work out asking other volunteers to do it. So.
Okay. Well, I'd like to move along soon here, because we'll be here all night. But we're not planting things tomorrow, so we'll get it worked out.
So
Okay.
what I hear now, we've floated the idea. We'll keep talking about it for the next meeting. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Trying to make sure I had my to-do list there. Okay.
Natani, could I make a suggestion? And I'd be glad to do it if you'd like. But since Sunderland has these sponsorships, would you like me to see if they have anything in writing and how that works?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, Becky, thank you, Becky. That reminds me that I made a note to myself to, I don't have experience with this policy. I haven't looked for it or seen it before, but I will go to a few libraries and see what I can find. So thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Mackenzie and Becky, for giving us some updates from the landscape meeting. So solar, like Dan said, we're going along on time here, but just real quickly, solar has been back and forth with Eversource. Ace Solar, who installed the solar, has said, it doesn't seem to be an issue on our end. It seems to be an Eversource issue. Eversource has copies of our bills. The most recent response I've copied here. So I'm in touch with a representative. She's a senior executive there, Esther, at Brian's recommendation.
Natani, you still have the list of to-do list for the building committee. Can you?
Okay. Sorry, I just say that I'm showing. Oops, we'll stop and then we'll show. Okay. Is it the right one now?
There it is. Okay.
Okay.
Now I see it.
I forget that it's sticky or something because I'm looking at the right thing, but you're not. It was saved for you somewhere else. Okay. So her response on Friday, might have been Thursday actually, was both the revenue meter and the production meter are picking up the monthly readings based on the consumption and sales since the system was online, which if you'll remember, the system went online around December, I think, like Christmas time. The library load and usage is consuming any sales produced to date. So our March 15th statement, which I don't have that yet, is showing the sales for the first time on the revenue meter. So she's following up. I'm told she's responsive, and I got this email and I said, well, I think I need a little bit of a lesson on the terminology that they're using, how to read a solar electricity bill, that kind of thing. So I put in a call to her on Friday, and she and I are going to speak tomorrow. So I hope to have a little bit more information to give you about this. The solar has been on the radar of Brian Nick from P3, myself, obviously, and Jacob from the select board for a while now. And Jacob has actually kind of jumped in the conversation as well. So we're still working on it. But, you know, right now it looks like possibly our bills are correct. And as Dan mentioned earlier in our meeting today, you know, Brian's already kind of flagged that, you know, this overage in our electricity, that's what the town has, you know, those reserve funds for. So we're still working on it. I wish I could give you a more definitive thing, but this is what we have most recently.
Okay.
So, Tani, I'm confused. Sorry, Dan. Are we seeing a savings, or are we not seeing a savings from the solar? I'm not clear on that.
Well, exactly. So this is all I have, Mackenzie, this information. To me, this is saying,
It's so small I can't read it.
okay, the library is consuming any sales produced to date. The March 15th statement, which I haven't actually received yet, is showing the sales for the first time on the revenue meter. So again, this is terminology that I'm like, well,
Yeah, I don't really know what that means.
right, exactly. Like she's using Eversource speak, which I need a translation, frankly. So that's why I'm like, I'm gonna have to talk to her about this and make sure that I understand how to read our bill. Because to me, this went to Brian, myself, and possibly Jake, but maybe not. And I haven't seen any response from them yet. But to me, this sounds like we have not produced any solar yet. We have used any energy that we have produced. So in other words, we have not had any savings yet. But according to her, the March 15th statement is showing that we are. That's the way I read it. But again, I'm going to seek confirmation from her.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that I don't understand. If the sun's shining, how we're not producing any solar electricity.
Well, I expect that we are producing some, but we're using all that we're producing plus more that they're supplying. And the meter is supposed to keep track of that, and the bill is supposed to reflect. And this is a general layman's way of saying it. Here's how much that came from your solar panels. Here's how much came for us. Here's how much you owe us. and we should be able to track that. But you know, it's been winter, covered with snow, not real sunny. We weren't certain for a while the meters were even connected and working properly. So next month, the month after, and certainly in June, we should have a very clear, here's how much the solar is giving us. Here's how much extra we need to buy, or it'd be real nice if we're not having to buy extra. And so we'll go another couple of months and we'll have a good handle on, is this really doing anything? Are we getting the money's worth out of this? Is it gonna, you know, won't pay for itself for 4,000 years? We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, because the promise was to produce quite a bit of our electricity, not 100%, but
Yeah.
you know, a significant chunk of our electricity was supposed to be being produced by this solar panel. So, all right.
Okay.
Oh, I'm choking a little bit. Can I ask about that, Mackenzie, directly referencing that? So they said, is that like a report somewhere? Do you remember, is that from ACE Solar or is that from P3? I would just love like an idea of like, what is this doing? Like, what is the system doing? And I can't find it anywhere.
It definitely was from, I mean, I remember sitting at the building committee meetings talking about this solar, and
Okay.
but I can't, so I want to say it would have come from the solar
Okay.
company. They would have
Okay.
given us their take on it.
Yep.
But definitely there's documentation for it somewhere where I want to say it was like 60-70% of our needs were going to be met.
Okay.
So
Okay.
definitely it's written down somewhere.
It's written down somewhere. Okay.
I will look in my notes for that because yes, I believe it was like 80%. And it was the architect who went through that and said what it could be. And there was something that they said that we couldn't produce, like say 120%, because you're a municipality. and that extra you can't sell. So that's why, so he said, have a solar panel system that will produce at least 80%. And that would be the aim or something, but I will look in my notes, because I, like Mackenzie, I remember discussing it, because we were discussing where the solar panel would be best, and so then the fire department didn't want it on the roof, and that's why we went with the field. So there is discussion about it, and I'll look for that for you.
The variable here is, at best, it's a mathematical calculation of how many, or what energy does this particular building, what will it need? You don't have a building yet, you're an architect, and all the specifications that tell you this is what the building will likely require. It's an estimate. And then on the other side, there's pretty technical, here's precisely what our panels will produce if at peak production. So you look at what you think the building's going to need with what you expect the panels will produce, and you see, you know, is that going to cover your needs or cover some part of your needs? But you don't know until it's done. So I suggest we kind of move on this subject for now, see how this goes in the next month or so, see what the March billing comes through, see what the April billing comes through. It'll be plenty of time for us to insert something in our final report if we need to about this either seems to be working or doesn't. So, but there's not much we can do about it this time. Just keep talking.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we increased our circulation 55% in CW Mars from the same time
Great.
last year. Great and surprising. Programming is still virtual. We haven't really added anything except the virtual story time, which is not popular yet. We're trying to grow that. There's about 6 families that are joining in on that. But we'll keep that going for a little bit longer. Community read, our chosen book is Station 11, which is a work of fiction. And I'm working on a couple of anticipated programs, a hike with members of the Irving Historical Commission. I'm not quite sure yet if they want to do it in person or not, or if they just want to produce something that's like a self-guided hiking tour booklet. But I'm working with them on that to correspond with the community read, as well as a survival kit program by Wolf Tree Programs of Montague. So I'm working with them on that. We don't have it finalized yet. And we'll do a book discussion. I'm going to do that in partnership with Northfield, and an author talk, which is what all the libraries are sponsoring. Libraries meeting the libraries in the woods. I'll give an update on that next month as well, because we start in April. Okay, so I want to get to reopening. I've been talking with the staff. I've been talking with Brian. Brian is convening a meeting of department heads on Thursday to discuss further reopening and what that might look like for departments. As you know, we move into step 1, phase 4 on tomorrow, March 22nd. Nothing much is really, well, we don't actually know what that's going to look like yet, but for libraries, Dan had wanted me to look at or talk about, is there a central list of libraries and whether they're open or not? To answer that question, Dan, there's nothing publicly available. There is a Google spreadsheet, excuse me, that the MBLC maintains, but it's only as good as the libraries that update it or send updates to them. So it may not necessarily be up to date all the time. I did just have a look at it. Most libraries had last updated it around mid-February. At that time, about 97 libraries were open, 45 of those only by appointment, and 144 libraries were not open at all. They were only still doing curbside. So that's that, and I can send that link to you if you'd like to look at that.
Yeah, so we've got 40 something or so that seem to be open to, well, 40 something open by appointment, and the other 40
Yep.
something out of the 90 are
Yep.
open to some varying degrees.
That's right. Yep. That's
And
of mid-February.
Okay, and just so Pat's aware, I'm not sure I've said this last time or the time before, certainly want our staff and every patron to be safe. On the other hand, I don't personally see the need to be far more restrictive than other places around, the state are. And we're still mixing apples with oranges when they tell people to stay home. Home might be a high-rise place in the city with 4,000 other people, or home might be out here in the country where we are. It's different. And so I don't just say, well, here's what everybody else is doing, let's do it. But I like to have a handle on what other people are doing, so we're not, unduly restricting our library if it seems safe to do otherwise. That's my reasoning for asking the questions. So there probably won't be a definitive answer, and we'll work our way through this whole thing as it goes along, and eventually we certainly would plan on being open more and more over time.
So, like I said, I talked to staff, and we're feeling more comfortable since that surge that was post holidays and into January and February has gone down. We would like to propose further reopening by appointment. So as you all know, we're currently open by appointment on Thursdays and Sundays. We'd like to extend that to Mondays and Tuesdays as well by appointment, and also extend the appointment and room booking hours from the current 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., which are our normal hours of operation. At this point, we don't feel comfortable just having walk-ins. We'd rather keep to appointments only. Staff are hoping to get vaccinated, once we are able to get appointments to do that. And also, of course, we have to be mindful of what other departments in town are doing. And that's why hopefully I'll have more information after Thursday when I meet with Brian and the other departments. The Senior Community Center is not open yet. The town offices are only open by appointment, as far as I'm aware. So, we're all providing the best service we can, I think. And I think the staff here have done a wonderful job responding to people. And as I said at the last meeting, we are noticing more people coming in and people that we haven't seen before. So that's been really wonderful to welcome people back in that way by appointment. So that's what we're proposing right now. So I'd like to hear what the trustees think about that further reopening by appointment. Two other things, I would like to propose that we change the quarantine duration. So there's been some discussion about the fact that the delivery bins that we receive on Mondays and Thursdays, that they've actually been sitting in the warehouse for at least 7 days. So I'm proposing that those that we open and check in the day that we receive them. So there, in other words, no quarantine here at the library. I am also thinking that the book drop returns, we can quarantine for a shorter amount of time. There's a little bit of, there's the study the Realm study, which has been going for a while, that did find virus on certain items up to 7 days. However, the NBLC in their, excuse me, not the NBLC, the state, mass.gov, in their documentation that they release on libraries reopening, they recommend quarantine for only 24 hours. So reducing our quarantine from 7 days to 3 days would get closer to that, but still ensure some, higher level of safety in line with that study. The other thing that's slightly different with mass.gov restrictions for libraries is that they have said that when people are browsing in the library, anything that they browse, so if you came in and picked up a book and you turned it over and you read the back cover just to see what the book was about, that those items should be quarantined for 24 hours. As a directive rather than a suggestion, and it does say that there's a $500 fine for not following So I'm inclined, as much as that is going to be a little more difficult for staff and for patrons, I'm inclined to start doing that. However, with the understanding that it will make probably a bit of a workload for us, as we have to keep items separate, and it takes them out of people's browsing for a little while. And I'd like to continue the amnesty mode, so no fines for the time being on late fine items.
Natani, there's,
Yes.
at least on my end, it was a little hard to hear you. You were coming
Okay.
in and out a little bit, but I think I got the gist of it. So
Okay.
could you tell me, are you looking to reopen for appointment only every day that it's open, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
Not Wednesdays at this point. We thought just for just to give cleaning staff, especially, and I have not gone over this with Pam to say that we would increase our opening. I would do that this week, but not Wednesdays. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, Sundays.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, to give cleaning staff, a little bit of a break in the middle there. It does require a bit more cleaning. Yeah, and just to kind of be in line with what other libraries in the area are. I think Northfield is open by appointment 4 days, and I think Montague libraries are 3 days a week.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's happened there, but suddenly there's a loud din behind you, and it's difficult to hear you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I can
So-
hear something, but it's not coming from my room.
Interesting. And then I think so that seems reasonable, although it would seem to me that doesn't matter. I think that's reasonable. And then the quarantining for 3 days instead of 7 seems reasonable. My question though is, you said that when you get deliveries from CW Mars, they've already been quarantined in the warehouse for 7 days. Are you positive? Are you sure? And do you feel comfortable that that's always the case, that they are quarantined?
I do feel comfortable. This discussion's been going on for a little while now, and I've sort of been watching what people have been saying about it. And I waited for MLS. So MLS, the Massachusetts system, they're the ones that contract the delivery service, and they weighed in and they said this is indeed what's happening. So I kind of waited for them to say yes, that's in fact what the process is. So I do feel comfortable, and I appreciate you asking that. But yes, I do.
Okay, I have a comment, but could I ask for a motion to authorize this change the reopening as outlined here?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Pat, second it? Just
I'll second it, sure.
Okay.
Mute.
we can hear you. You're good.
Okay, well, we got the motion second, and my comment is I don't know why. I don't know I don't have the expertise to know why Mass Library says we have to quarantine browse things for 24 hours or get a $100 fine, or where their authority to do that comes from. I don't like it. I think it's wrong. When you go to Walmart and browse something, you don't have to quarantine the can of tomato soup you put back for 24 hours or anything else. But
Yeah.
I can't argue with them. I'll just, record that I don't think that's right. I'm certainly in favor of reopening at least this much when we have 40 plus libraries around the state that seem to be open way more than we are. I don't know if they have any restrictions, but they're open way more than we are. So I'm in favor of this, and unless there's further comment, I just call for a vote that we authorize this. In favor? Aye?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Tanya, I would just ask that when patrons do come in for those appointments, that your staff just explicitly tell them that they have to put their things in a bin or something. Maybe have bins at the top, on the top of the shelves or whatever, so that it's really clear that they have to put whatever they touch in those bins.
Yeah, so what libraries have been doing with this is a lot of libraries purchase like shopping baskets, which I actually did that previously because I thought it would just be good for patrons when they came in to have something to carry their items in. But what they're doing is anything that you touch, you put in the basket, and then you bring it up, and then we know that those items have to be held separately. So yeah, I think we should be able to manage the process pretty well.
Okay,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
okay. What else
I just want
do
to
you
say
have for us?
that, I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Pat. It's okay.
I just want to say that all of these people that are coming into the library, first off, I think, aren't they have restrictions that they have to wash their hands before they enter?
We asked them to use hand sanitizer on the way in.
Okay, so they've already done that.
Mhm.
I don't know about any of you, but when I go grocery shopping, I don't quarantine any of the items, whether it's groceries or any other miscellaneous items. I bring them into my home. So I'm not suggesting that we loosen any of the restrictions that are set by any of the organizations that we have to abide by, but I am saying that you probably should start loosening the purse strings and the apron strings a little bit.
I agree.
I don't quite understand what that means.
I mean that, if you're going to take the books and put them in a shopping cart, wouldn't it be just as easy to Lysol them? I don't know. There's plenty of disinfectant. I don't know, but is that a restriction that is being placed on you? And that was the $500 fee that you were talking about?
Yeah, so it's not been placed by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. It's been put in place by part of the sector-specific protocols that mass.gov, you can find them on mass.gov. So I guess we called the reopening task force or whatever they're called for the state. They have different, and I'm sure you would know about this, Pat, different protocols for different types of businesses, organizations, that kind of thing. So that's where this is found. It's like a checklist,
Sure,
but it's not, yeah.
The minimum, if we have to do the minimum or get fined $500, obviously that's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I have not been doing that. Like we have not, when patrons come into the house, we do not ask them to, we do not say, okay, you touched that, we have to quarantine that now. We've been letting people just browse like you would in the grocery store. And I've actually had patrons come in that are going to other libraries and they ask me, because it's being done in other libraries, they say, oh, do you need to quarantine this now? And I wasn't doing it, but now that it's kind of been codified in this, I feel like I have to do this.
What you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with that too.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, and quickly on strategic planning. So as I told you before, from here on out until October, when we have to submit our strategic plan, this will be a standing item. So I attended the workshop. I have done a strategic plan before, as you know. We need to start thinking about our process. Strategic plans are due October 1st. So I always work backwards with a timeline. So that means that, we would need to bring it to a board meeting for everybody to approve at the meeting. So the summer is usually the bulk of the time when you're collecting data, you're doing surveys, getting community input. The first step for us is to think about who we want to be on a committee to undertake the strategic planning for the library. So, I'm seeking your assistance in who would lead this committee, who we should ask to be on this committee. There's definitely best practices along these lines. It's good to have somebody who is a senior to represent that demographic. It's great to have somebody who is a teen or even a child. On my last strategic planning, I had a child and her mother on the committee. We need to think about maybe somebody that doesn't use the library, as a non-user, who can come in and give us input from that perspective. So I'm asking for you to think about the formation of our committee to help undertake the strategic planning process. The idea that by April, we've got a committee lined up, ready to go, ready to start the work.
Okay. Well, I have a couple people in mind, and could I suggest that each of us individually contact Natani if we have people we might have in mind, or we might even talk to a couple people and say, hey, if you're interested in learning more about the strategic planning, ask them to contact Natani, and you could explain to them what might be required of them.
Great.
A couple people in mind that I think might very well have an interest. And Becky, you still with us?
Yeah,
But I don't know when you have another meeting of the building committee, or if you have like an email chain list of people on the committee, but it might be reasonable to ask, is there anyone on the building committee who would like to, we don't need 35 people, but is there some 1 or 2 people on the building committee who would want to follow through on all their years of work in this building done and participate a little bit in the strategic planning thing, and see in the next week or 2 if any of them have an interest. That it sounds like something you could do, Becky, for us?
yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Becky.
And perhaps you and the friends would certainly like to have input on our strategic planning. You do so much for us. But I don't want to heap more work on you if you don't have time or desire to do it. But if you'd like to, I'm quite sure we'd love to have you be a part of it.
Okay, I'll consider, and I will present it to the friends as well and see if there's somebody on that in our group that would want to serve.
Okay. Pat and Mackenzie, you have any other thoughts on that?
Not at this moment, but I'll be thinking about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. And if either one of you wanted to, be a part of this too, that's fine. I mean, yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. What else we have?
We have the Friends report, and then we have 2 policies to consider.
Okay. Do you have something for us, Becky?
Well, we're getting ready for our plant sale, and that's going to be the 24th and 25th of April. We are looking into purchasing some plants from either Fairview or Mill River Farms to have in addition to the donations that we receive, but having some flowers in bloom available for sale. So we're really just in the planning process right now. And we are also going to hold a raffle, just one item. And if you purchase so many plants, for example, $10, you will get a free ticket for the raffle, but you can also purchase additional tickets for the raffle, which will be a kind of like a spring themed basket. Anything with flowers, like somebody donated some pot holders and they had a floral display. Somebody else is donating a trowel and gardening gloves and some seeds. And we will, in addition to what the friends are donating, we will also donate one of the hanging baskets as part of that raffle basket. And we have one person that makes candy, and so is going to make chocolates in the shape of flowers. So it's still something different, but it's got the floral theme. And we're going to put together some books in bags and sell the bags of books. So
Okay.
that's really all that we have going on right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Becky, your townwide yard sale is sorely missed. There's been several Facebook posts about it. People are wondering if it's going to happen this year, and others have said, no, not at least not in the spring. And so just know that people are missing it out there.
I know, I wish we could have it, but the committee said no. I mean, so I'm a non-voting member, so.
There you go.
Okay,
Okay,
and so we got policies to look at?
we do. I'll start with the hotspot policy because I'd like to get that approved so I can start lending those. We have them nearly ready to circulate. So let me put that one up. So I heard that it's a little small. Do people need me to increase it?
If you can increase it, I'm worried that if I even touch my screen, it'll all just go away because that's what happens.
Okay, okay. Is that a little better?
Yes,
Yeah,
I can
thank
see
you.
it.
Okay. All right. So again, as with all good policies, I looked at other libraries. You have to be 18 or older. I'm thinking of taking out this patron must have a current photo ID. I'm thinking of taking that out and not asking for photo ID. The checkout period, I'm proposing 2 weeks. Our neighboring library of Northfield does it for 1 week. However, I feel 2 weeks is a little more patron friendly. 1 week barely gives you much time. We allow them to be returned to our drop boxes, which is convenient. I purchased some pretty, solid plastic boxes to house the devices, so I think they'll be fine going into the drop box. We do want to have fines and cap them at $10. If a hotspot isn't returned, you can immediately switch it off so it's no longer usable. Hopefully that wouldn't be an issue, but we can make it unusable straight away. And then we outline the replacement costs so that people up front know exactly what they're in for if they do not return it or return it damaged. And we have worked with the provider so that international roaming is not available on the library hotspots, which Northfield found out by accident that they had not turned that off. So I made sure that that had been turned off. So I've got 2 hotspots, and I'm hoping that they will be a good addition to the collection of Library of Things.
Natani, why are you capping the fee at $10?
So fee is capped at $10 only because after that, if we mark it as not coming back, it goes into loss, and then immediately the $140 fee takes over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in other words, if they are 1 day overdue, then they would get the $1 fine, but it goes into loss status as soon as that cap is reached.
So on the 11th day, theoretically, it would move into lost and automatically trigger 140.
Yep. Yep.
And so if they brought it back on the 12th day, what would happen?
So if they brought it back on the 12th day, currently right now, there's no, we waive the fines. I'm thinking it's kind of, you want to see how it goes in terms of our patrons bringing it back. But on the 12th day, if they bring it back, currently, because we're waiving fines, the fines would be waived. So everything would disappear, just like another item.
So it would be $10, or it would be pretend there are fines.
No, so we're waiving fines right now. So this is this is assuming in a world where we're not waiving fines.
Right.
So right now, if they brought it back, they are not liable for that $10. So it is, in some ways, it's a disincentive to bring it back because they're not getting the fines, but that's with all of our items right now.
Yeah, so again, let me ask this again because I don't know that I was clear what I was asking. Pretend
Okay.
it's a normal year, right? Where
Yep,
there are
yep.
normal fines.
Yep.
On the 12th day, they
Yep.
bring it back. What
Yep.
would they be charged?
$10.
They'd be charged $10. Okay.
Yeah.
I am concerned about the fact that we are waiving fees. I feel like if we lose a book, if we lose a DVD, whatever. The hotspots, though, now I can see somebody like, well, I don't have to have Wi-Fi anymore. I can just take this hotspot and use it for 4 months because what difference does it make? There's no fees.
Well, they wouldn't be able to because we can disconnect it. So then
Okay.
it's like, it's just having a little black box that does nothing.
And how
So would
much
you
does
say-
it cost us to buy these hotspots?
So there's no fee to purchase the device, but we pay, I think it's $40 a month. So it's $1,000 total for the two per year.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if somebody, they have it out, it gets past the time, you disconnected it, are they just gonna pitch it? Are they just gonna be like, oh well, and throw it away or put it in a drawer or whatever? We're still out that device. Does the company give us another device, or what do we do as the library?
No, we would have to get it just like any other. I mean, some libraries will say like if you have 140, if you have a certain amount of bills on your account, then they do send collections for it. So, there's always, if you have a bill, then you can send collections to address that bill. But no, there's no, the company is not replacing it because it simply wasn't brought back.
Right, so what I'm saying is, what does the library do at that point? Oh, do we have to buy another one? Like, we're now out a hotspot, right? Somebody's
Correct.
thrown it in a drawer.
Yep.
What do we have to do to replenish?
So you would have to purchase another one or decide not to replenish it because the experience was so poor.
And so how much would it cost us to replenish it?
Well, I think it would just be another, like adding the $40 onto a new one. So it depends on if we're out the hotspot, like say next month, then there would be, I think there's like it's not really a cancellation, but it's like a $350. Oh, okay. Like you don't have it anymore, or you've decided to not have it anymore, so you want to cancel the service on it. There is it's kind of like a cancellation, but they don't really call it that. So we would be out that amount.
Yeah.
Can I just make a suggestion here? It's one thing if you're going to hand out and let somebody go out the door with a DVD that's worth $14.99 or a book that is $12.99, but we are allowing children, whether they be 8 years old or 14 years old, we're giving them something $140.
No, you have to be 18 or older to check it out. So I wouldn't check it out with a child.
Right. So they're, considered, I don't know. Well, I have to say, I think there's plenty of responsible 18-year-olds. However, if there is somebody that's going to come in, you're not going to tell me that in 2 weeks they're going to be bringing it back. First off, I'm a firm believer in everything has a value. And I understand that we're waiving a lot of that right now because of the pandemic, and there's a lot of extra outside interferences with a lot of our processes. However, I am not for just giving it out. I think that for this particular item, there should be some kind of a deposit. I don't know. Or some kind of money that they can put a value to this loan to.
Would it be, how about some libraries have you sign like a contract? I can look into that.
I don't know. How does everybody else feel about that? I just feel like giving something that's $140 for absolutely nothing but the word and we don't really have anything set in place, like, let's say, for instance, when it is generated through whatever process or you have, or programming you have, that it wouldn't generate in, let's say, 12 days, an email to that person saying your hotspot is due in 3 days. If it's not returned, the service will be discontinued and you will be charged X amount of money. I just think that there should be something. There should be something.
Well, how about as a suggestion, Natani, there are other places, as you mentioned, that have I don't know if it's a contract, but they have some kind of a document. And the person's over 18. So if the document lists, just so it's clear, here's how long you get to keep it for. If you keep it longer, it'll be shut off. You'll get an email. You need to give us an email before you take it. You'll get an email to remind you that it's due, and can set this up automatically somehow. So it's not a lot of extra work for you and the staff. So there's an automatic reminder goes out to people. And so there's very clear, here's what the cost is going to be. But I'm still a little bit unclear on the question Mackenzie had. We pay for the service $40 a month roughly per thing, so it's $1,000 a year, and that's fine. And somebody gives us a couple of these things to use. We don't have to pay for them. But if one is lost or stolen, it doesn't come back, and we want to buy another one, what's it going to cost us to buy another one? I don't know quite about that.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's a like $350. I don't remember exactly. It was a $350, $340, something like that. If for some reason we need to break that contract, or we need to say, hey, this one never came back, let's get another one.
So
I'd kind of like to have a little clarity on that, so that we, because if it's going to cost us $350 to get another one, and I'm not talking about breaking the contract, saying right now we have a contract with this company. They're going to provide us with the two hotspot services that are used on these two machines. So we just say, look, this one got run over by a truck. We need to buy another machine or get another machine. We're continuing the service. We're not canceling anything. What does it cost us to get another one of those machines? I'd kind of like to know that. But also, I'm kind of inclined to have some sort of a documentation in place, as Pat suggests. They sign it, and that's fine. And give it a try. If we're not out much here, to try it and see. This similar thing came up. I'm sure Pat knows Sil Stemple, I think, and from years ago. And he was on the finance committee when the library first bought a Commodore 64. And
a what? Sorry?
It's a Commodore 64. It's probably a computer that was before you were born.
Okay.
It was glorified. Huh? What?
Maybe before I was born.
Well, it wasn't a whole lot more than,
yeah.
It had a keyboard. It wasn't a whole lot more than a glorified calculator, but it would do a few things. It had 64 kilobytes, a KB, whatever it was, practically nothing. And finance committee was incredibly skeptical. What if people don't bring this thing back? We didn't have any problem. People were thrilled to have it, and they brought them back. So I kind of like to give it a try. If it doesn't, if somebody just keeps one, or if they keep both of them, the program's probably going to end. But
right, and it's a risk that you take when you have a library of things. If you have a library of things, those things, as Pat suggested, they do have value, and they do have more value than a book. So it is a risk that you take to provide a service to your community. We can definitely look at this policy and say, well, let's increase the numbers on it. And, but in the end, it's a risk that you take. And
but my thought is, go ahead.
No, you finish.
Well, my thought is, if the people aren't going to be ambitious enough to bring the thing back and throw it in the book slot, they're probably going to have a heck of a time collecting $200-300 from them. On the other hand, we might inquire. It's a reasonable thing to ask Brian and Chief Holtz. If somebody doesn't bring this thing back, can we send the cops over to get it? Can you do that, or can't you do that? Maybe we can. Hey, where's my machine?
The other thing is that what most libraries do, excuse me, what most libraries do is they restrict it to Irving, their town's residents only. So this is not something that could go out to somebody in Millers or somebody in Northfield. It's somebody has to provide, proof of I live in Irving. So that kind of just restricts your patronage circulation on that.
I definitely like that idea. I would like to see some more numbers though. Like Dan
Okay.
said, how much would it cost to procure another hotspot? Because here we're saying, $140 if you don't return it, which also includes the charger and the case, which,
Yep.
where is that number coming from? Is that because that's the cost to replace it? Is that just a number somebody came up with as, oh, I think this will be the deterrent number? If this isn't the number that's going to replace that device, then I think we need to match what the cost will be to replace the device.
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And I can say, that these were definitely numbers that were pulled from a different library. And, we can definitely make those numbers whatever we think of as, we can make it higher than what it would cost to replace it because there's work involved in doing that. So,
well, because generally when we do a lost book or whatever replacement, it's the cost to replace the thing. If the book costs $20 and the replacement, it's got to match. So I'm just curious, to make sure these numbers match. And if it costs nothing, if the company says, oh, it costs you nothing to get the device, you just, you're going to pay for that month even though you don't have the device, then okay, then $140 maybe we keep, because that's probably a high enough number that some family is going to say, yikes, I don't want to have to spend $140. We're going to make sure that we get this thing returned. Like there's a point, there's a threshold in which you say, that's a big enough deterrent. I'm going to make sure it gets returned. Dan, I love your optimism. I am not so optimistic. I am not as that during the pandemic, people are going to return this thing. Because if you don't have Wi-Fi, finding out that you can get this free hotspot is a really big deal. All of a sudden, you're going to have Wi-Fi in your house. And if there's no fees to return it, where is the incentive to return it after 2 weeks, right? There isn't.
There's no incentive.
Well,
It doesn't work.
the incentive is you turn it off.
It doesn't work, right? And that's true, but then that doesn't actually help us get it back, right? So yes, you're right, but then that's why I see somebody throwing it in a drawer or throwing it out because they're like, oh well, it doesn't work. Why should I keep it? And just getting rid of it. So I think it's really going to depend on finding out from the company how much it's going to be to replace the hotspot. That's what's going to make the decision, make me feel more comfortable about sending it out without any fees. Because yes, you can turn it off, but if you say the fee is also $140 and this is an exception to the no book fees, so you're going to be charged that $140, again, that might be the incentive for the family to say, well, shoot, I better return this thing. Even if it's turned off on day 11, I'm going to return it because then I will only be charged $10. And that's why I was asking you what happens on day 11 if they show up with it, or day 12, right? I mean, what if they go on a vacation and they leave it in the hotel room, right? We're all out of it. They're out of their hotspot and we're out of the device. So it depends on how expensive it will be to replace the hotspot as to whether then we make an exception to the fine of this lost item. And we tell them they're out the money, whether they,
Well, would it be accurate to say that in general, we're in favor of this hotspot program, just need a little more definition on the money, and then we can move forward probably with it.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll get some different numbers for you.
Is this a possibility to include in this policy that, and I know this is going to be a little bit more work for you, Natani, but however, it's only 2 hotspots, that 3, possibly 2 days before the date of return, that you just send an email. Of course, they have to have a valid email to even take the hotspot, but to send a reminder saying it's due, it's going to be shut off, please return it.
Yeah, so Pat, we're part of CW Mars, which these items will be barcoded and in the system. So they automatically receive
Perfect.
emails about item being due. Yep, we don't have to do that. Yeah.
Good.
But if they don't come back, well, I worked at a city library prior, two jobs back, and we circulated 8 hotspots at that library. Very occasionally, we'd have a problem with somebody not returning it or not returning on time. And if the day after they was due, we would give those people a call, and then it would come back.
Okay.
Okay.
What else do we have?
So we have the behavior policy. Let's stop. All right, so we'll increase that. Okay. So this policy was already in existence. The one that I could find digitally and print version seems to have been last updated. Just scroll to the bottom real quick. 2010. Okay.
So,
Yep.
no, you go, sorry.
Oh, okay. So I've gone through and made changes, both strike through where I want to delete things and added things, and they're in red. And I've gone over this policy with the staff as well. So some of this, their input as well. There is a section at the end that refers to our security cameras, which I feel it's important to have something about that. Now I feel like because of what I say in that statement that it would definitely need to, well, I share my policies with Brian anyways. I'm interested in seeing that because legal counsel might have some say on what we say about security footage. So.
Can you scroll it up a bit?
Sure.
Just to, wherever the next red stuff is. Okay.
Okay.
The only one I had a question about was just the eating and drinking, because the heading of the section says disruptive behavior includes but is not limited to eating and drinking. But then it does say consumption of food is only allowed at designated cafe tables, designated for. So I didn't know if included but not limited to, we're talking about a disruptive behavior, but then we're saying, oh, but really it's not, because you actually can do it in some instances.
Okay.
And maybe that's just the way I'm reading it. Maybe there's that's just, whatever. It doesn't. That was the only one that I thought of that I was like, oh, well, I don't know about that. Because in our old library, it was very obvious that like there was no appropriate place. You really shouldn't be eating and drinking, although kids always were anyways. But this library is a little different.
If you think there's a better way to phrase that, or if it should be its own separate section, yeah, I welcome your feedback about how to place that.
Well, Mackenzie or Pat, if you have a suggestion on how to
I'm thinking about it.
place this elsewhere or something, I don't much care. To me, it gets the idea across. There's a little bit unusual wording of up on the top says these things are prohibited, and down below says you can do these here and here and here, but not there. But, but I don't much care. It gets the idea across to people, and to me the policies as much for the staff to follow as for people coming in, and so the staff can't just walk. Not any staff we have now, but we look at future, and I don't know who's going to be here 15 years from now. Maybe they'll have a different policy, but they can't just walk up and say randomly because they don't like somebody, you can't do that here. there's a policy that says it keeps it fair to everybody. And I don't care where it is. To me, it doesn't make much difference, but if you want to put it in a different place, suggest it and we'll move it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah, I have to say, and I'm just going to put this out there, people. I read this through this afternoon, and I am thinking, do we really have to put all of this in words? Does everybody need to be?
yeah, yeah, that's a good point, Pat. I mean,
I just say that? I'm appalled at some of this stuff, like lewd and lascivious behavior. I'm like, seriously, in a library?
well, yeah, yeah.
I go with whatever the flow, but I think when you put stuff out in a policy, it's got to be guidelines with some common sense. If people are going to the library, you have to assume that they're somewhat intelligent people, and they're not going to be thinking, well, wait a minute, it says I could eat and drink, or we could maybe be abusive if, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I just sort of feel like it could be, it's fine as it is. That's all.
Well, Pat, I share much of what, not everything, but I'm sure I share much of your concern that how you, I, and many people I know were brought up, this stuff would never occur to us. And there are other people just look at things, they look at things so differently. You know, when
That's-
Harry Truman said you make no money in politics unless you're a crook. Well, the crooks all have sure their ears perked up and said, we ought to go into politics. There's money there. Never occurred to me, you know.
I
And
totally understand that.
yeah.
I agree.
wish we
Although,
could-
yeah, again, you always wonder why there's warnings like hot, coffee is hot. Well, clearly it's because somebody, didn't think it was hot or whatever, and now they have to put the labels on it that coffee's hot.
Well, you know, I saw a facetious thing not long ago on the internet. Said when you used to buy a car, they give you little instructions with it, and you could do everything except rebuild the transmission with those instructions. And now the instructions say, do not drink the contents of the battery. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
so it's
Pretty
a
much.
different world we're in.
It's a different world.
Just
And-
Okay.
wow. I don't even have a word that describes it other than wow.
The only other section that I just had a question about was at the very bottom about the recording, and whether we need to put in there that the capacity, the images are kept until capacity, until image capacity of the system is reached or older, the oldest video will automatically be deleted, providing space for new recordings. I'm thinking, like, let's not tell them that. I would rather people think that these videos are being held forever rather than tell them that after a month it's no good. So could we just take out that little section and just say, all the rest of it, the town retains all recording images, period. And then video records may be used by law enforcement agencies in accordance with applicable laws. Like, so take out the little bit about how long it's stored for.
That part?
I'd like to discuss that before you delete it, because I don't know that the town has the capacity or the desire to store this stuff forever. Somebody comes along and, I don't know, claims that, somebody slammed their finger in the door 9 years ago. You got to go look this up for my court case. There may be reasons why we just keep it for a while, not just that, we don't have enough room to store the videotapes. We've got clouds and all this other stuff. It could be stored.
I'm not suggesting we say that we keep it forever. I'm just suggesting we don't tell them we don't keep it forever. Like, why do they need to know that?
Yeah, so these are the things that, I don't know if there's some legal implication here, which is why I would want Brian to check in with them about it. I mean, we can take it out for now, and if they say that has to be in there, then.
Okay, then that's the answer. But
If this was put in with consulting with Brian, I think it would be good to ask that question and get back to us with it. If it were me, perhaps for the safety of the staff, you need to have some ability to see what happened, if somebody attacked them or if something happened, you know, or patrons fighting with each other. I don't know. But I'm really not so much in favor of government surveillance everywhere. They're on every light corner, everywhere you go, there's cameras all over the place. And I think we need less of that instead of more. But
Yeah, but I think you have to tell somebody if they are. I know at the
Yeah.
school, they have to post that there are surveillance cameras so that people are aware of it. Just kind of to your point, Dan, so that if they choose to not want to be on camera, they know
Yeah.
that they shouldn't be there. So I do think we have to post that that's happening. I
Okay.
just don't think we need to share with them the whole, you know, it's kept until it's full and then we delete it part.
How about if we check with Brian, see if there's a reason why they suggested that be in there?
Yep.
Is that okay?
Other than that, I think it's good. I think it's
Okay.
comprehensive.
Yeah, and to your point, Pat, about, you know, the extensive list, I was a little bit surprised when I, you know, inherited the policy that everything was kind of spelled out like that. It's kind of a mixed bag out there in the library world. Some libraries do have similar lists to this, very similar lists, and then some just say everybody must be respectful, and that's it. So it, you know, it goes in both directions. So.
Okay.
All right. There's anything else that I needed to address, correct? It's just the surveillance and
The eating and drinking.
the eating and drinking, but we decided to leave it, correct?
Yeah, I'm withdrawing my comment. It's fine.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank
Okay.
you for looking at that.
Okay. And perhaps by next meeting, we can, you know, approve it.
Yep. And I'll
Okay.
probably have another policy too for you. Oh, joy.
Okay. Okay.
The policies don't stop. Okay. So what else do we have? Anything next meeting, maybe? That might be the last thing.
I have one more thing.
Yep.
I may have mentioned this before, but I brought to Natani a copy of what I had. It may have been from 10 years ago. I don't know when it was from. The policy that Barbara had given to me, a couple loose leaf binders, and I asked if she would return to me precisely as it exists, that the policy that it was. So I've got a historical record, but
Yeah.
also work towards over time providing a binder to each of us trustees with all of our updated policies in it, so we at least have them. So if somebody has a question, you know, we won't have to shrug our shoulders and say, I don't know, we've got a policy to look at. Okay?
We have a reference. Good. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd also like to
Okay.
make them publicly available on the website. They haven't traditionally been, it looks like, put on the website, but it seems like a good place to have them too.
Okay. I don't think I have anything else other than, again, I had trouble. I couldn't open these things the way that they were sent to me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
we'll work on it and get resolved. But maybe for our next meeting, if you send the things and I can't open them, I'll get in touch with you ahead of time so
Sure.
we can be sent to me a different way. We'll get there.
So you were
Okay.
trying to open those with your Irving account?
I'm not.
I don't believe I did. I looked at them
Okay.
on my personal account where you send them to me. I'll
Okay.
check them on the Irving account and see if
Okay.
perhaps I can open them there, and that may be the difference.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. If there's
So-
anything else,
Next meeting,
Next meeting.
we're looking at maybe the 11th or the 18th.
Let's see.
okay.
The 11th would be the third week from today, or the 18th if you want to do it the third week in April. I don't have a preference, so what do you guys want?
Either one is fine with me.
Okay, I'm thinking perhaps the 11th. Well, when's our annual town meeting?
May.
May.
May, okay, so we're in April. I skipped a month here, okay. Okay, yeah, okay. All right, then the 18th would be fine with me, I think,
You'd rather the 18th?
if that's okay. That gives us about a month from now, roughly,
Okay.
okay?
At 4?
Okay.
They're always at 4, correct?
4 o'clock, okay.
Yeah.
Be all right? Okay. And if that becomes a problem for you, Pat, or others, we can change it, but if it works, we'll keep doing it.
That's perfect for me. Mhm.
Great.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second?
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
6:44, okay. Well, our faster than ever meeting last week was made up for by this one. If we
Aye.
average them out, we're still around an hour and a half. So thank you for all of your input.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Everybody have a
All
good
right.
day.
You too.
Natalia,
Bye.
can you hold for just a second?
You all set?
I just had a question for Natani since I had her on the screen, but
Oh,
unrelated
okay, yeah.
to this meeting.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
All right, I'll just leave. Have a good day.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye.
I'll stop the recording too, I guess.